وضعناك في أيام شقوتنا ولا نزال محبك المشوقين.
The emir remained in this situation while the army faced deficiencies in supplies, equipment, etc., and his dominion was in a state of weakness until the peace between him and the Christians had expired. No one noticed them until they had entered the city of Al-Hammah, and it was deserted, for no one was there except for the families of its army commanders. The Christians took over the citadel while the people were sleeping in tranquility. No one even noticed when the Christians descended from the citadel to the city with their swords drawn, and they had intensely slaughtered and captured the inhabitants until many were killed or fled. That is, those who were able to flee. The Christians seized the city and all of its inhabitants, men, women, children, as well as its wealth. That was on the 9th of the month of Muharram, in the beginning of the year 887 Hijri. When news of what the Christians had done to their Muslim brothers reached the people of Granada, there was an uproar. They said, "We will not tolerate this great calamity. There is no good in living after this great catastrophe. We either free our brothers or we die trying to save them." They gathered with Emir Abil Hassan and his ministers. The Emir and his ministers declined and prevented them. They waited and watched them. Then they both said to them, "Be patient until we gather ourselves and prepare to fight a war." The lay people did not relent until they were forced out. And so the army advanced, and they had found that the Christians had left the city, with those whom they had captured from amongst its men, women, and children, along with the wealth. They had piled it on their riding animals, and they were determined to head back to their own lands. When they saw the horses of the Muslims had advanced towards them, they dropped everything, and they re-entered the city and fortified themselves within its walls. The Muslims headed towards what they had dropped from their plunder, and they came close to the Christians and fought them with earnest and every effort and determination, with burning hearts and resolution, until they had entered through some of the gates of the city, breaking them down and burning them. They ascended the walls of the city, and they reveled in how close they were to entering. While they were at that point, almost entering the city, an order reached them from Emir Abil Hassan and the minister who had ordered them to return from the fighting. The people refused to return. So they said to the people, "We will enter tomorrow in the early morning, because the night has come upon us now." And so the people stopped fighting and returned to their camps. Meanwhile, the Christians began to rectify their current situation. They fortified their walls and sealed up the damage. When the morning came, the Muslims looked upon the city and found that it was in a different condition, having been fortified and reinforced. It became even more difficult for the Muslims to enter it, or even to get close. The Muslims were determined to besiege the city and regain control of it, and so they sent emissaries to every Muslim all throughout the lands of Al-Andalus. Then, they had come together in a great gathering. They opened up the markets for trade. Everything they had needed, from food, fodder, and other necessities, were obtained from their markets. They besieged their enemies with ferociousness and cut off their water supplies, firewood, entrances, and exits. The lay people who took part in the siege were determined, resolute, serious, and exerted every effort. They had true sincerity and burning hearts. The minister promised the people that they would enter the city and fight, making promise after promise. He would say, "We'll take them shortly while they are dying from thirst, and here we are working towards tricking our way into entry." His shortcomings, excessiveness, and deception began to show, one after the other, to the point where the regular folk and the elite members of society started to see it clearly, as clear as the sun. They started to have bad suspicions about the king and the minister, and the wicked speech started to spread amongst them. When that was starting to take place, the shaitan, the devil, began to spur the fitna, the tribulations among them. They, meaning these devils among the people, would address the common folk, speaking about issues that seemingly show the deceit of the king and the minister towards the Muslims. While the people were having evil thoughts about their emir and his minister, they, meaning the emir and the minister, would do something underhanded and write a letter that was in fact a forgery, as if they were bringing some sincere advice written by the Muslims involved in the struggle, or jihad, bordering the lands of the disbelievers. May Allah destroy the disbelievers. It would inform them that the transgressor, the king of the Christians, had gathered a great army together and mobilized the masses, and was intent on aiding the Christians who were besieged in the city of Al-Hammah. And they were only a short distance away, and that you were no longer able to face them in battle. When the minister informed them about what was mentioned and scared them with that information, the people became distraught with regret and despair. He ordered them to travel back to their lands and to go away from Dar al-Harb, the place of war. So the people begrudgingly left, weeping with regret of their failure, saying, "How shocking! Ya laha min khasra! What a great loss!" And so every person went back to his own land. Several months later, the Emir Abul Hassan revived the call to return to the city of Al-Hammah once again. They went out a second time and besieged the city, but they were not able to take anything back, so they turned away from it and left. When the enemies, may Allah destroy them, saw that the Muslims were unable to take back Al-Hammah and aid those who were held captive therein, they became pretentious and desired all of Al-Andalus, so they had prepared themselves and set forth for the rest of Al-Andalus.